with Bruce Gandy. Bruce Gandy in August 2020. We're really pleased to hear that you've written a book called Performance, Delivering Your Own Awesome. Bruce, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Pleasure, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
So tell us a little bit about the book. What inspired you to write it?
It came really about 4 years ago. I started to look through to try and kind of organize a lot of articles that I'd done for schools and workshops. Some were playing articles, and some were just what would we call them, lecture type articles on a few things that were dealing with nerves, uh, being in control, preparing for competition, just things like that. And when I talked to someone, I said, I've got a lot of this and I'm trying to get it all in one place. And between getting it on, and it was actually Stephanie Burns at a school who said, if you have a lot of stuff, you need to remember to write it down and get it printed out because technology and we lose it. And I said, yeah, I'm starting to do that. She goes, but if you have a lot of stuff written down and done, you should write a book about it. You've been in the game for a long time. And I basically thought, quite honestly, what privilege do I have to write a book? Like, I'm not an English major, I'm not an author. Like the obvious sort of, are you allowed to actually write a book? Well, of course you are. But you start thinking about that. I mean, I knew I could write a music book because I've written lots of tunes, but am I allowed to write a nonfiction book? And it was just compiling these articles and then sort of deciding after talking with a few people about how to get from just starting to learn to delivering a performance at the end. And then where do you go after the performance, which is something that really troubles a lot of people, which isn't the world's biggest deal, but it's much the same as preparing for retirement. You just stop work and that's it. No, you have to do something. So for this, it's really about, what I've done with the charity, helping my friends, helping people along and moving forward to the next set of tasks. So it's roughly divided into four sections. The first being learning of the tunes or the music or the skill set that you're working on, the raw learning of it, which for me is the basic sort of ABCs of it. And it could be in music, and a lot of comparisons I made refer to golf as well, which you and I are both golf fans, and I played on a team. And a lot of it came back to me when I was starting to figure out how to practice with purpose, understanding small steps for big gains. We can do that so much easier now because of our ability to record, etc., etc. Moving on to the rehearsal stage. So how we can now set up to try and be in the rehearsal mode, learning to love what you do, committing to it, having fun. Moves to the third part, which is actually the performance, calming your nerves for the performance, visualization that I've studied for a long, long time on how to do it. A thing I call the 180 factor, which is a big part of the book, really, about reversing everything or answering every question you may have that can happen. As a teacher, every time I ask someone to play, especially well, even kids, but adults, I get the I get the disclaimer right off the bat. Okay, I'll play the fourth part, but I'm not sure if I can do this because of this, because of this, because of this. So they've already got the seeds of doubt in their mind. So the 180 really sort of deals with how to deal with that stuff.
Hmm.
And then the final part being moving forward, helping your friends, learning to lead, avoiding mediocrity if you can, and inspiring others.
Interesting. So with what we do as pipers and drummers, there's the actual execution part of it, the playing part, but the mental side of it, how much of a role do you think the psychological side plays in competitive piping and drumming?
I think it I think it's more than it ever was, for one thing, because of the seriousness and the size of the group. But I'm a firm believer that my ability to understand and cope with what's going on mentally keeps me still competing when I physically battle hand issues and stuff all the time. I'm in therapy constantly. So the point being is that if you're practicing the basic skills, and again, we look at easy for you and I, you go to the golf range and you take one club and you hit a bucket of balls with it and you hit it 60, 70, 80 yards like the pros do. They get really good at that, but you still have to deliver that on the field. So it could be a part of a tune or even manufacturing getting dressed and standing out there and not being scared to death because you've rehearsed it at home. So I try to deal with some of that. And it's a belief in yourself and understanding that when you've done the work, you've done the work. Easiest one to think of is for piping, when your drones are tuned and you start, it's kind of not worth worrying about after that because you can't reach up and touch them. So you have to believe that you have everything set when you go and you set out and you do it. But that's an easy example of all of these other things slash demons that can occur when we're playing. So I think the mental game is a crazy amount, and, which is again why I write down everything I find ever to be an issue, and I make sure I write beside it what the solving is.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of people would be surprised to hear that Bruce Gandy, goes through these sorts of things, to be mentally prepared. Sometimes the people like yourselves, the elite sort of competitors out there or bands, look like they're not disturbed by anything. They're not flustered. They just get on with it.
I think
Um,
yeah, I think you can get into your place at that time. I mean, my hope when I'm playing at well, even for instance, last week in the Aboyne contest was that I would be rehearsed, I would feel good that day, my pipes would be going good. So at the time I started, my autopilot in me is going to play all the notes correctly because I've rehearsed that. The bagpipe is in tune and it will stay in tune. And my whole thing is just to deliver the music the way I feel that needs to be delivered. I'm not worrying about, am I going to make that movement to F? Am I going to make that D strike? Because it's too late if you're worrying about it. It's going to happen for sure, and then you're going to worry about doing it all the time.
mhm. And
So and Willie, I know works really hard at that and the mental game because we've talked about that.
that's Willie McCallum you're talking
Willie
about?
McCallum,
Hmm.
but I don't actually know about a guy like Stuart Little, but he looks so absolutely unbelievably relaxed. Maybe he just doesn't get rattled, or maybe he hides it better. You know, uh, Jack Lee just makes sure that he's in absolute perfect form, and he just about angers his own self out of the fact that there can't be an error because he knows he's playing right, and it's just going to be that. And Jack's such an amazing competitor over
Yeah,
there.
that it's interesting. The we talked a little bit beforehand about converting, maybe call it the negative, the anger, whatever it might be, into a positive. Elements like that in the book.
Yes, probably the a big I won't say a big chapter, but a big idea is something I came across, and I can't remember where someone had mentioned it to me. So I started to come up with a thing that I call the 180 factor, and it was just an easy way for me to look at everything. I started to call it an issue instead of a problem, because problem means trouble. But if we have an issue, and what I learned from reading a couple of psychology type books is that to just think about it and do it doesn't help. Much like people who really believe in journaling. If you write down the issue and you write the response to fix it, and then you write what you think the result will be, it actually does begin to work after a while. And it's been tremendous help. I can give a couple of examples quickly. One year, and it's in the story, but all the piping people know that I played at Glenfiddich one year. I was actually starting to think about this stuff and write down things where, if I have trouble at something, how do I fix it? Now, one year the Peacocks were going wild there, and they disturbed a player to the fact that it shocked them when they turned around, caused a big error in the player. I saw that, and immediately I thought, oh, what a drag for starters, poor guy. But then I thought, that's going to happen when I play. How do I combat that? So I actually went up there on the stage, ready for that. I went to the window. This was actually, I think, the year before they put the screens up in the window. But I went there and I saw those peacocks out there. And because I study visualization, and people think it's all nuts probably, but it's actually the truth. I looked there and I waited for that sort of peacock to hop up and envisioned that thing going to me. But I was prepared for it, and sure enough, it did. It was up on the windowsill when I was playing, but it didn't bother me because of the accident that had happened to someone else. I thought this might happen to me. How am I going to deal with it? Will I be ready for it? Fine. And so that's kind of one instance of where it happens. But people say, how does that really work? And another easy one is I ask people, who's ever gone to the contest field the first time at a new place? You're always nervous, especially adults and young kids. But when you go there the second time, you already know how long it takes you to drive. You already know where you can stop. You know where to park. You know where the official tent is. You know where the things are. And you're much more calm and relaxed going to the field the second time you've been there. So it goes from obvious, easy things into a lot deeper when you're thinking about something within your performance. Then you start writing it down, and you must be able to figure out what the answers are. Sorry, what the answers are, and go from there.
So a lot of familiarity and knowing what to expect in visualizing
Yeah.
those sorts of elements. Just, the book, is it really just for top level players, or is it kind of for every level of player?
I want, I believe it's for everyone. I believe it's not just a bagpipe book either. I think it's 100% a coaching book on delivering your best performance, although I still can't putt very good. I think about a lot of that stuff on the golf course. And I have golf references in there because that's my other thing. But I could see where this could be in basketball. I've talked with my brother-in-law about a lot of the concepts, how we could use it in hockey. So I think any sport or discipline that you need to go from starting at something to delivering the finished product, I think it can help.
Hmm, interesting.
So, yeah, it's not a bagpipe book. It just the bulk of the references are around piping.
Well, that's terrific. It sounds like a really interesting uh, addition for pipers and drummers. It's Performance, Delivering Your Own Awesome by Bruce Gandy. It's coming out, if it's not out right now. That's in Friesen Press. And Bruce, thanks a lot for talking to us today.
Thanks, Andrew. Pleasure.
All right, all the best.
Thanks.